Patrick is the former chief of the U.S. Department of Justice Child Exploitation and Obscenity section in Washington, D.C. And during the administrations of President Ronald Reagan and also President H. Bush, he led successful prosecution efforts that resulted in more than 100 convictions of the top pornographers in the country. And Dawn is the Executive Director of Morality Media and Director of Pornography Harms. It encompasses all of Morality and Media's educational efforts. And Dawn has become one of the few people who speak out regularly in the mainstream press about the harm of pornography. Dawn is a graduate of Tufts University, currently resides with her husband Michael in Arlington, Virginia. We're delighted that she's going to add to her family and extend our congratulations. But she's going to wait until September to have the addition to her family. So please join me in welcoming these two incredible people.
Part of this effort. Dawn and I are going to do a little 1-2 punch here. I'll start out with a little bit of an introduction. Morality in Media is an interfaith group. I happen to be Catholic, Dawn is Mormon. We have a board of directors that has evangelical Jews, mixed staff, etc. Because what we know about the key to solving this problem of pornography and indecency in America is that we all have to work together, and it's mostly people of faith and values putting aside their differences and working together. You heard a little bit about Dawn's background. She is formerly a political strategist, helping candidates like Marco Rubio and others. She's a social networking expert. And 3 years ago, when Morality and Media was looking for a president, they reached out to me. I left my law firm to become president because I thought this was such an important issue at this time in America. And Dawn and I were doing several volunteer projects together, and I decided that she's the perfect person to run Morality and Media. So she is the executive director. You heard a little bit more about her background, but what Dawn is an activist, and Dawn is a coalition builder. And that's what Morality and Media needs. That's what this nation needs right now. There's a lot of groups, as you see in this hallway out here, doing great things to help people with this problem of pornography. And this is what Morality and Media wants to do: connect us all together, get these good ideas out there. And I want to, we're going to pass around, we have that sign-up sheet?
We'll bring it. We'll bring it.
Okay, so we're going to pass around a little sign-up sheet if you'd like to be active. And at the beginning of my few words here, I want to say that if anybody here is struggling with pornography, and I know in a group this size, we've got 1,100 or 1,200 people there, of course people are struggling with this. And don't let shame keep you from getting help. We're here to help you. There's all these groups here to help you. This is such a common problem in America. It's as common as the cold. And we want people to step forward and get help. People love you and want to get you free from this problem. We, as I said, are an activist group. And when Dawn and I began this effort 3 years ago with Morality and Media, what we did is survey where the movement is. The movement against pornography and for decency used to be very large in America. I was part of it almost 30 years ago. And then for the most part, it was dying off. So when Dawn and I came on board 3 years ago to Morality and Media, what we decided is that we can't win it alone. We need a coalition of groups. So we've connected groups like Focus on the Family, Family Research Council, American Family Association, Utah Coalition Against Pornography, all together in a coalition to act together. And what Morality and Media tries to do is simply find out where the problems are, how to connect people to them. We're going to talk about that today, and but just mentioning some of the projects that we've had that I think that some of you are aware of. a couple years ago, Groupon. Are you familiar with Groupon? They're the online coupon company. They were promoting a couple of pornography coupons. And we began a campaign against them and got literally thousands of people to write them and say, I'm giving up Groupon. And Groupon at first, it's all guy board. And this is a big thing for them, porn, wow. And they would have had more of this. But all these people told them we're giving up Groupon, and they stopped and made a vow not to be involved with pornography again. We have to make pornography intolerable in society. You're going to hear a little story about Dawn finding on an airplane being exposed to pornography and turning all the airline companies around on this, getting them all to have a policy against allowing someone on their smartphone or on their computer to look at pornography on an airplane. We have a wonderful project called Safe Schools, Safe Library. You can get to that through our website. Many of you live in towns where the public library has pornography available on computer. I understand that's a problem right here. We have the Safe Schools, Safe Library project at our website, pornharms.com. You can go there and get a packet, and with that packet, you'll win in your community against the American Library Association, which wants porn in every American library. We have a nationwide call-in effort from time to time to Congress and to public officials. We shut down the phone lines at the U.S. Department of Justice, in the Criminal Division, in the Attorney General's office, several other offices, because he wasn't enforcing the laws on pornography. We connect people to action, and that's what we hope to accomplish today, to get you involved, and whatever you can do to be involved in action. We have a great online presence with Facebook, Pinterest, which I don't even know about. Dawn knows about. We have a Twitter page, a YouTube page. So today, what our goal is to tell you a little bit about morality in media and how you can be involved. And right now, I'm going to turn it over to Dawn.
First, I think I just want to start with what are we talking about. Because you're here, I think many of you understand some of the harms of pornography and exactly what it is that we're talking about. But I'm just going to briefly go over them, because for me, when I first got involved in the issue, it was kind of a small thing. I was living in Europe for a while, and when I got back to the United States, I just felt like I didn't want the U.S. to become like it is there, where pornography is everywhere you look. But as I learned a lot more about the harms and the real effects that pornography is having on individuals and on families, I became a lot more motivated and encouraged to get involved in the issue. So I just want to say that today pornography is not just pictures of topless women. I think a lot of people, especially religious people, they think that it's like Playboy was in the 1960s. Today, pornography is much harder, much more deviant. It's so much more addictive, and this is why we need to do something. We need to do a lot of things about this. In addition, it's available, anonymous, and affordable. The internet makes it so easy to get this stuff. You don't have to go down to the corner store and buy it, and everybody will see you buying it. Now you can just get it as much as you want, at whatever time you want, and for free. So, and then the pornographers' tactics have evolved. They're targeting us, they're targeting our youth, and they're trying to get us hooked. And they're the most genius marketers. They're better than almost anyone else out there. They are the ones who are using technology the best, I think, I would argue. So, why should we be concerned? Men, women, and children are developing lifelong addictions. Every week we get hundreds of emails from people around the country talking about how their children are getting access to pornography, and the parents are finding that kids are just, they keep looking. They're curious, they want more, they don't understand what it might be doing to them. And so it's really important that we help, in order to protect their futures, that we help them, we protect them from this material at young ages. And then we know that it's destroying families. One statistic that is used over and over again is from the Association of Matrimonial Lawyers. They all got together and they said, they were surveyed, and they said that 56% of the divorces that they represented cited internet pornography as one of the major contributing factors. It's definitely destroying families. And with the breakdown of the family, we know that society is going to follow soon thereafter. Early exposure among children affects their psychological, physical, and social development. I think that's obvious, and you'll hear a lot about that today, and the need to really protect our children. Pornography, especially today, is exploitative and objectifies women. Most of the mainstream today is particularly violent towards women. And so that definitely affects the culture in our society and how we treat women around us. A lot of people don't realize, but performers in pornography themselves are often forced and coerced. And I have had I would say, the privilege to get to know many performers in pornography and to hear their stories and to learn from them and just to see really the hell that they're put through. And most of them come from such broken families and backgrounds. They've been hurt tremendously. And the porn industry just takes advantage of them. And so people who are regularly viewing pornography are just propagating that abuse of these individuals. We know that pornography increases the demand for sex trafficking. I'll explain a little bit later, but a lot of times regular users of pornography seek to act out what they're viewing. You know, their partners, wives, they don't usually want to do what they're seeing in pornography, and so they seek it elsewhere. And so they go and buy sex, and a lot of those women are trafficked. They're forced into it. Trafficking, we know, has become one of the nation's main focuses. We hear about it everywhere. On the news this morning on CNN, they had a whole thing about sex trafficking and what the UN is doing. The important thing is to realize we'll never solve that problem of sex trafficking unless we address what is driving the demand, and that's pornography. We also know that pornography increases the demand for child pornography. As I get in a little bit to the brain science, you'll understand that when you start with one image, you're not satisfied with that any longer, and you seek to find harder materials in order to be satisfied, and you deviate to different things. And some people are deviating to child pornography. This is why it's such a big problem today, so much more than it was 20 years ago, and why it's really critical that we take action now to oppose this wherever we can. Just a little bit about the brain science. I'm not an expert, but I've read lots of their books and lots of their research. But we know a lot of experts have explained that pornography addiction is actually harder to overcome than cocaine addiction or alcohol addiction. The truth is that the images stay in your brain, and when you can get the alcohol and the drugs out of your system, pornography can't get out of your system, right? I can remember the first time I saw pornography when I was 9 years old. I can see the image still in my head. And so it's important to understand that, you know, once you get hooked, it's a very tough addiction to overcome. It disrupts the normal release of chemicals in your brain. When I learned, I'm out of breath, I think it's because I'm pregnant. But when I learned about the brain science behind what happens with pornography, I was just amazed. I suddenly felt this surge of hope in the fight. And so let me try to explain to you in layman's terms. When we're engaged in regular sexual activity with our spouses, for example, dopamine and norepinephrine, these chemicals are released. It makes us attracted to them. It helps us feel excited to be around them and to see all of their good qualities. It makes our heart beat faster. It helps us create lasting memories and just bond with that individual, excited for the intimacy that might be coming. But the problem with pornography is those things are still released and you're excited. But instead of bonding with a person, you're bonding with an image. And you find that you can't really be satisfied with it. It's an image. It's not a real person that you can interact with and grow with. But after a sexual act, intimacy between spouses, for example, these other chemicals are released: dopamine, norepinephrine, oxytocin, these endorphins. And that makes you feel satisfied and excited. It helps increase your trust and your bond with each other and just, you know, to enjoy the moment. And but again, with pornography, very little of that is released. And so all those exciting chemicals are released, making you want more and more and more. But those chemicals that help you feel like, okay, it's good, those aren't released. So that's why oftentimes users can just watch pornography for hours and hours and hours, and also why they deviate to harder materials, like I discussed earlier. It's great in a relationship. A friend of mine posted this picture on Facebook of her great-grandparents, and I just loved it. They've been married for 83 years. The husband, I think, was 104, and the wife 101 or something. And I just thought it was so amazing. This is what our bodies are programmed to do, right? To form connections with other individuals. But when we're disrupting it with pornography or other kinds of content, you know, it's very hard to enjoy this beautiful kind of relationship. So, I I hope that helps you feel a little bit more of the need to do something about this. It's a very dangerous thing, pornography, and a lot of people, they haven't realized what it can do to us. Research shows all of these things now, and so it's time to step up and to oppose this wherever we can. I'm not going to spend very much time here, but pornographers are, as I said, expert at marketing. They're really good at getting you hooked. They offer free images. Like the other day I was on YouTube watching those videos where like the soldiers come home and surprise their family, and I found myself watching it for like 2 hours because on the side more were showing up and I just kept clicking. It's the same with pornography, right? You look at one image and there's just a ton more and you just keep clicking and clicking and clicking and it gets you hooked. They're really good at targeting kids. They, for example, had a porn site was Disney.org, I think, and so, or no, it was Disney.co. So if a kid was trying to go to the Disney website and they just forgot the M, they were going to see hardcore pornography. The pornographers are good at that. WhiteHouse.com, I think, was a porn site for many years, whereas the website should be whitehouse.gov. They're very good at slightly misspelling things. And so it's important for, if you have children, especially, and all of you are, even if you don't have kids, you might have grandkids, neighbors, people in your church, kids in your community, they need your help. They need you to do something and step up to protect them. So there's hope. I feel like I've just said all these negative, sad things, but there's so much hope. We hear from hundreds of people every week about their struggles with pornography, but we also hear from people who are overcoming it and who are, the brain it can be fixed, those chemicals can be fixed with time and effort. Our relationships can be healed. And so I really want you to feel like that. There's much that you can do. But before you seek to do something in the community, it's very important that you're first protecting yourself and your family. If you're not protected, if you're not taking efforts to take care of those closest to you, then that's hurting the whole movement overall. So strengthen your family. Make sure that you're staying free from it yourself. One thing, a couple people came up to me and told me, I would just encourage you to not feel like you have the responsibility to go seek out pornography and report it. It's all over social media, websites, Facebook, YouTube, etc. It's not your job to go look for it, to report it, to get it removed. We encourage you to not do anything like that. There's lots of tools available, filters, there's accountability software, there's a lot of addiction recovery software where you can have a partner who you can lean on if you're struggling. Make sure you're educated and up to date on the dangers. I think some of the best tools for parents are these filtering companies. They have these blogs where they write the most recent technology things. It's hard to keep up with this stuff, but kids know way more than you know about technology. The latest apps, the latest dangers. So you need to do a lot of work to stay up to date. I just want to say that you can speak up too in public. Pat mentioned my airplane incident, and many of you might have heard of it too, because people just come up to me out of nowhere who heard about it. But I was actually on my way to Utah on a big swing around the country, and a man was watching pornography in front of me. And I confronted him. I'm kind of sad, by the way. I was so overwhelmed and mad at him. I wish I was a little more controlled, but I confronted him. He didn't turn it off. He even told me he wasn't looking at pornography when I could see it. It was particularly violent, and I'm really sure it was child pornography, but sometimes you can't tell if someone's 14 or 18, right? So I don't know if it was child pornography. But I said something to the flight attendant. And the flight attendant, a man, he said there's nothing he could do about it, which just made me so much more outraged. When I got off the airplane, I made this little YouTube video in all of my emotion, and I meant to just share that with our supporters. But that video ended up going fairly viral, a few 100,000 views, and for a while it was pretty scary. I was getting tons of threats and lots of opposition, and it was terrifying. But the good thing was we contacted all of the airlines, and we started getting some attention. And every airline except for American agreed to change their policies. It wasn't even hard. All we did was call them and ask. And they said some of them just changed their policies to no porn allowed at all. And some of them already had policies like that, but they weren't training their flight attendants very well on it, so they promised to include that in their training. And all it took was asking. That was it. And it's completely worth it. I hear stories all the time of people who they see these pornographic magazines at a grocery store or a gas station, and they go talk to the manager. And sometimes it doesn't work. But sometimes all it takes is just asking, and those managers will move it to the back or put it under the counter. So I just want to encourage you to speak up where you can, wherever you see it. It feels uncomfortable sometimes, and people will look at you like you're crazy. But I think in my experience, about half the time, it's successful. And if anything, you're helping those people understand that there is some kind of problem with this, right? That they should be worried. And so that's my little thing. So I want you to stand up when you see it in public, whenever you can. And I think Pat will talk some more about our specific initiatives.
Well, I want to mention one that's very important right now. As I said, Morality in Media is an activist organization connecting people to activism. And right now there's a battle with the Federal Communications Commission. Not everybody is totally familiar with that agency, but that's the agency that is supposed to guard television, broadcast television, from indecency and profanity. There is a federal statute that prohibits indecent material and profane material on broadcast TV. Now that law was written before cable TV, so it doesn't apply to cable or satellite. And you know what those channels are like. If you've guys seen HBO and this, it's hardcore pornography sometimes. But broadcast TV, ABC, NBC, Fox, CBS, they're supposed to abide by the law. Now, quick question. What does it cost ABC or NBC or these others to get a broadcast license and to make millions of dollars? What did that cost them? Anybody have a guess? Cost this much, zero. The federal government has given those companies a free broadcast license, but they have to do two things. They have to keep indecency and profanity off the air, and they have to cover the news. And they can make millions of dollars. That's their agreement. But you know what those companies are doing. Hollywood has a mindset that we're going to change the public. Look at what's happened with same-sex marriage in America. That's primarily the result, these polls today with young people, primarily the result of all these sitcoms they put on television. You look what's happened with some of these shows. Do you remember Stephen Bochco? Do you know that name? Stephen Bochco was the producer and director of NYPD Blue. And he openly said, I'm going to change television, broadcast television. He's going to allow nudity on television. And he did that. Right now, the Federal Communications Commission is in our focus. I guess we're not allowed to say anymore, we haven't even crossed it, because that deals with guns. But the point is, the Federal Communications Commission, over the last 4 years, I don't mean to make this a political comment, but the man that President Obama put in as the chairman of the 5-member Federal Communications Commission, a man named Julius Benekowski, has refused to enforce the law, to even bring one enforcement action against any indecency or profanity on TV. Is there any wonder it's gotten worse? Now, he used the excuse that, well, the courts are looking at the standard that we use for enforcement, because, see, in the Bush administration, Kevin Martin, the Federal Communications Commission chairman, decided that the standard was too loose, and he was going to prosecute every incident of profanity, every incident of indecency. And so you remember the Janet Jackson Super Bowl so-called malfunction where she exposed her breast? That was an enforcement action. But the NYPD Blue one with the naked woman, totally naked from the backside, you could see through her legs, the little boy that was on the other side looking at her. They thought that was good television in prime time. Now, those were a couple of enforcement actions. The Golden Glove Awards, where the singer Bono and some others used the F words, there was an enforcement action against them, and the television networks went to court to say that this should be allowed. They have a constitutional right to put this on. It went up to the Supreme Court, and the court said no. broadcast and decency standards are still in effect. Well, what the current Federal Communications Commission chairman wants to do is just what the networks want to do. He wants to change the enforcement standard to one that would allow, quote, isolated incidences of nudity and isolated incidences of profanity. Now, what do you think would happen to broadcast television if the FCC officially sanctions that kind of thing? The Janet Jackson event would be an officially sanctioned, FCC-sanctioned display of nudity. And all the broadcast companies would just try to fit in nudity and profanity in every show. They lack creativity. And that's what they would do. So we've got a battle against them right now. The Federal Communications Commission is wanting to change the standard, the one I just mentioned, and there's a comment period where the public can weigh in. And to make it easy for you and all people, if you just go to our website, pornharms.com, right there, and pornharms.com/FCC, and you actually see this right on the main website, pornharms.com, right on the front page. You can file your own comment with the Federal Communications Commission. We're leading this nationwide battle, and so far we've got about 100,000 comments to the FCC, and the comments are running 1,000 to 1 against weakening the decency standard. This is very important because you won't put this genie back in the bottle if they change the standard. And now the Federal Communications Commission chairman is stepping down, and President Obama has appointed someone to be the new chair of the Federal Communications Commission. And who is he? He's an insider with the broadcast industry, someone who lobbies for the industry. But he has to be confirmed by the Senate. And our campaign is to say to the United States Senate, don't approve anyone who will be like the current chairman. You have to appoint someone or approve someone who will agree to vigorously enforce the decency standard. So I want to encourage you to go to pornharms.com and register your point of view. In just a couple sentences, that's all it takes. Second of all, I want to mention our Dirty Dozen list. This is another very important tool. This Dirty Dozen list lists the top facilitators of pornography in America. You've got this sheet in your packet. Every one of you have given this. And this list will change from time to time. But when you look at who is on this list, number one is the Attorney General of the United States. He's on that list because he shut down the prosecution office charged with prosecuting hardcore pornography. This is a Washington bureaucrat that doesn't believe in protecting your kids from pornography, and until he changes his mind, he's number one on the list. Look at the last one, number 12 on the list, the Department of Defense. You know that there's a federal law that prohibits the military from selling pornography on bases, PXs and gas stations, etc., on a military base. It's called the Military Honor and Decency Act, but the Department of Defense ignores that law. You find porn in all these PXs. Now, fortunately, the current Secretary of Defense, Chuck Hagel, and I never would have expected this, but he's taking some action. I'm going to talk a little bit about it in my keynote address later on. But the Department of Defense, until they enforce that law, is on that list. And you can see some of the others that are on here as well. We've got the American Library Association over here, because the American Library Association wants every library in America to have pornography available on computer for everyone. What a nice sounding name, American Library Association. Cosmopolitan Magazine is nothing but a porn magazine without the pictures. Barnes and Nobles is there. So we need people to get involved with our Dirty Dozen list. I want Dawn to take over and talk about a couple others here. She's the expert on them.
So if you go to our website, pornharms.com/dirtydozen, you can see why we put some of these companies on. I'm sure that many of you have questions about why we picked some of them. So there's explanations, and if you go to their individual pages, there's an action item you can take. We have most of their investors, the head of their companies, etc. You can just put in your information and send an email with just a click of a button. And I just want to emphasize how important that is. I think we're always asked to sign petitions and take action and make a call, and I think sometimes we start thinking it doesn't matter, but it really matters. If these companies are hearing from you, a lot of times they'll change their ways or improve their policies. Like Pat said earlier with Groupon, they heard from 20,000 people. It took so much work to get that. But if, we need everyone that we can get to take action before these companies will listen. We put, for example, probably some of you are asking why is Facebook on here. I don't know if you're aware, but there's tons of pornography on Facebook. And Facebook has a policy. We're proud of Facebook for their policy that prohibits pornography and a lot of indecent material, but they're not very good at enforcing this law and their rules. And unfortunately, they leave a lot of the policing of its website to us, the users, instead of using their resources themselves. There's a lot of, I've seen child pornography on Facebook, and it takes them hours to get it down. That's unacceptable. And our children today are getting this. You know, my site is totally locked down. I'm not seeing it as much, but my little sister is, right? Predators are spending so much time on there. They're looking for vulnerable kids. They're sending them these images and this content. And parents, it's scary. And so this is why we've put them on here. Google Play, similar. Google Play is the app store for the Android phone. Apple doesn't allow pornography in their app store. A lot of people might not realize that, but they don't have any pornography in their app store, and they don't allow it. They have strict enforcement of this. If an app has more sexual content than is usual, they kick it out right away. Like they kicked Twitter out a couple months ago, if you saw in the news, until Twitter changed their way. But Android and the Google platform is completely different. There's tons of pornography there. They don't even have a policy that says that no pornography is allowed. And a lot of these app developers are putting them in every category. So the category that your kids would go to for kid-related apps, there's porn in there. And so unless you're regulating their phone and their usage, they're going to see this stuff. It's hard to block it out. So like I said, go to pornharms.com/dirtydozen, or just our main webpage, and you can see places where you can take action. Pat talked a little bit about our Safe Schools, Safe Libraries packet, and I just want to commend, I'm assuming most of you, almost all of you, are probably from Utah. Utah is like one of the best states in the country on this issue specifically. There's a group here, Women for Decency. They also have a booth, and they have really taken the lead in making sure that the libraries are as clean as possible. They helped to get a bill passed in 2004 by your state legislature to mandate that filters be in every library and school. Unfortunate thing is that a lot of libraries have found their way around this, and there's a lot of loopholes now in the law. It's kind of outdated. So we're working to tighten that here in Utah. But like Pat said, Salt Lake City, you go to the library and you can just click filter, unfilter, click unfilter, as much pornography as you want. And I have like a Google alert on my computer, and so every day I get 5 to 10 emails about people accessing pornography in the country. And it's not just that they're looking at it, it's what they're also doing as they're looking at it. Oftentimes, men are going to libraries and they're watching it and they're exposing themselves. They're stalking patrons or the librarians. There have been a couple stories a year where they'll take children into the bathroom and molest them, sexually abuse them. It's a big problem if we're allowing this kind of content to be accessed freely in these places that are supposed to be safe. You know, we're posing a lot of dangers to many people. And so our argument is just that filters should be installed and libraries should have a no porn policy. The U.S. Supreme Court has upheld this. People might argue, the American Library Association says all the time, it's a First Amendment right. First of all, obscenity is not protected by First Amendment. And second, the Supreme Court ruled that it's legal and it's okay, constitutional, for libraries to choose what content they're going to have, and they're allowed to have filters in their libraries. The problem is that libraries don't have very many resources. They belong to the American Library Association, which is not a government or a government organization. It's private. But they belong to this organization, and they rely on them for information about what they can do. All these local libraries can't afford big lawyers who can interpret and understand the law. And so because the ALA is telling them, you can't have this, oftentimes they're just afraid, so they just don't. And so all it takes is concerned citizens to get together and to go to their library board meetings, to go to your head librarians and say, we want filters. And around the country in the last 2 years, we've had success after success of this. We're just a leader rallies people in her community. They go to the library board and they ask for filters. And sometimes the library says, we're not interested. So the next meeting, they get more people. And every time that we've tried it so far, that Morale and Media has been involved, we have succeeded in getting filters installed. So if you're interested in leading this, it's not good, it's not perfect in Utah. There still are a lot of problems, especially if you're in the Salt Lake area. There's a lot of things needed. We've got a Getting Started packet that will teach you some of the history, some talking points, equip you. It's kind of scary to go and ask for this, but we're here to help you. And so if you're interested in this, go to our website. You can go to our main website too, and you'll get to it. But we really encourage you to take a lead. We can't come in from Washington, D.C. to insist that, you know, Provo libraries have filters. They're going to look at us like, who are you? You don't belong to our community, right? But you can do it, and we're here to help you. And we've networked with all these other groups to provide you with the tools. If you need if you need someone to come and present with you, we'll come. If you need to know what filters, we've got filtering companies that even are willing to give them away for free if your library says we don't have the money for them. So we've got it all ready and set up for you. We just need local leaders who are willing to speak up. With the problem in schools, I'm not sure how much time I have, but in Utah specifically, they're starting to hand out iPads and laptops to students, and these are unfiltered. So the internet at school might be filtered, but when they're taking these things home, they have them in their bedrooms. So this is like a loophole that can easily be fixed in Utah. If you have children at schools where they're giving this stuff out, all you have to do is demand that they start putting filters on the computer itself, no matter where the kids are accessing internet, if they're protected. I think another one of our projects, we just launched our first one, is, I don't know what to call it, a city blitz campaign is kind of what it's become, a pornography awareness campaign. We just did one in Birmingham, Alabama, and had a lot of success. We have a lot of requests to do it in other places. We're organizing one in Oklahoma City for this October, and probably in Lafayette, Louisiana. But I have the most requests from Utah to do this. The only thing we need is some local leaders who can get it off the ground, because we can't do it from Washington here locally. So what it entails is putting up billboards. We'll gather local resources, so as people are driving by, we know that people are struggling with this issue of pornography. Their marriages are being affected, or parents are worried about what's going to happen with their kids. And so we'll put together a list of local resources to help them, local clinicians where they can go to. We'll have parents' meetings. We did a lot of interfaith outreach. In Birmingham, we got a lot of the Christian churches there to all address the issue of pornography on the same Sunday, which is incredible. Incredible. A lot of the evangelical churches, they don't feel comfortable talking about this from the pulpit, but they brought it up, and it just took asking them. We had a lot of local media coverage and some youth education. We've got groups that go into schools. Utah is really good at that. So we wanted to provide you some tools, some things you can specifically do today to make a difference against pornography. Speak up when you see it. Take action. We encourage you to join us, our Facebook page, or sign up for our emails. We send about 1 email a week with action items, things like where you could take action with the FCC or with the Pentagon and the Department of Defense, this Dirty Dozen stuff. There's so much that you can do, and we're only limited in our efforts by numbers. We need a bigger army. We need more people to speak up. So here are some things you can do today. Go home, get your friends, your family to do these things.
Well, I want to conclude just by saying that the condition of yourself, your family, your community, your country is really dependent on you and all the people in this room. And it's no accident that you came here today to this conference. This is one of the best conferences on this issue anywhere in the country. I'm commended for that. I encourage you to get active. Get the help you need if you need help, and many do, but get active. We just have about 10 minutes here before we are officially out of time. I don't know when they're going to open the doors and require us to leave, but I want to allow about 10, 12 minutes here for question and answers, because I know some of you might have some. So go right ahead. Yes, sir.
I'm not sure that I was straight relative to the brain science. You said that dopamine, oxytocin, and so on are created when married partners have an intimate relationship. But my confusion is relative to a pornographic encounter. Are they released or not?
So the first chemicals are released that make you feel excited, norepinephrine and dopamine, that make you really want more and get you ready and prepared to engage in sexual relations with your wife or your husband, right? So those are released But the problem is when you're looking at pornography, the other chemicals are released in very small amounts. And so you're just left wanting more and just demanding more. And also you're just bonding with these images instead of physical people. So
the two, dopamine and
norepinephrine.
are released together.
Or just in very little amounts, yeah.
Years ago, there was an effort to quarantine online websites that got sex. That seemed to go away. Do you know anything about that, or is there a new
Yes.
effort to quarantine?
Well, let me repeat the questions. I forgot we were, you don't have a mic and it's supposed to be recorded. The question is there still an effort underway to quarantine all the porn sites into one place on the internet, the XXX? Actually, I opposed that proposal for many, many years. And I would still oppose it today, putting all the porn sites in one place, because there's no way you can make the pornographers go there. You see, their argument was, give us a XXX site on the internet, and everybody that's got a porn site on .com will migrate over there. And I always said now for about 10, 12 years, no, they'll stay where they are on the .com and they'll open up additional sites on the XXX. And that's in fact when they started the XXX domain, which did get off the ground 2 years ago, that's exactly what happened. It just meant more sites on the internet, because there's no way you can force them to go there. And then people say, well, why doesn't Congress pass a law to force them all to go there? Well, ignoring the constitutional problems, if Congress passes a law making it illegal to be on the .com and move over to the internet, sounds like a good idea. But right now, it's illegal in the United States to distribute hardcore pornography on the internet. Why aren't we enforcing that law? So a new law wouldn't be enforced by the Justice Department if this law wasn't. We could clean up the internet. I'm going to talk about that in my keynote. We could clean up the internet. But we don't use the law we have. So
Can I just add to that? So they're also proposing right now to add 3 more domains. So XXX is in existence, and we haven't seen any of the porn sites move. There's just more. And now they're proposing a .porn, a .sex, and a .adult site, which we're actively opposing to. That's another action item we encourage you to take part in. Because if those are passed, that all just means more pornography and much more deviant types of pornography than is already out there. And so, yeah.
yes, sir.
I do understand what it's like. I grew up most of my life. And since coming to Utah, I noticed that some parents are very uneducated in regards to this topic. When do you think that a good time is to start talking to your kids about their cause and effect of what pornography can do?
Well, it's important, I think, to start. I'm not a mom yet, so I don't have the best, not speaking from experience, but I think it's important to start talking about healthy intimacy and healthy sexuality from as early as they can recognize body parts and what these things are. And then you continue that conversation throughout their growing up. And when appropriate, you start addressing pornography. The thing is, our kids are seeing pornography in elementary school. They're seeing it and they know. And a lot of parents think, our kids aren't going to seek it out. Well, they're probably not going to seek it out, but they're still being exposed to it. And so it's important that you're the one driving the conversation on this and not allowing their friends or the internet to drive the conversation. And so even as early as elementary school, it's important that you start talking about pornography specifically, but you should start talking about healthy sexuality at a much younger age.
Yes, sir.
In view of the fact that it's so difficult to prosecute pornographers, shouldn't we start prosecuting users in a mild way?
All right, the question is, in view of the notion that it's hard to prosecute pornographers, shouldn't we prosecute the users? Actually, I want to just correct you. It's not difficult to prosecute pornography. I was head of the section at the Justice Department for 5 years, U.S. Department of Justice, and we never lost a case because a lot of it's determined by community standards, whether something is illegal or not. And when you, in a court of law, in a criminal case, you show the jury parts of the video, and in the closing arguments, you ask what you saw on this film, does that represent your community values? And even people who like pornography have to admit, no, we're better than that. And, you know, I've complained about this Justice Department, Eric Holder, the Obama administration, not doing cases on pornography. Well, they did a case last year in Los Angeles. They didn't initiate that. That started in the Bush administration. And they won. They convicted a pornographer. If you can convict a pornography in Los Angeles, you sure can here in Utah. But I don't think that the law should be focused on the individual. I think that it should be focused on the ones who are distributing, and certainly on federal law. It should. Yes, sir.
So, say you're in a store or a library and you see pornography. Give some example of what you would say to ask them to remove it.
So if I'm in a library, I would go and ask for the head librarian, and I would say, is this material allowed to be accessed? Can you please do something about it? It's affecting everybody around them. It's kids are walking by and they're seeing it. And usually the librarian will be quick to say, go ask the guy to turn it off. If you're at a store, ask for the store manager. That's the person. And sometimes the manager will say, oh, it's coming from corporate. And so we have to have this here. But you can say, well, you get to choose kind of how you lay out your store. Oftentimes they do have that, that leeway. And so you just keep pressing them. And I would go with a couple of these bullet points of harms. Like, do you realize it's leading to the exploitation of women? That kids are seeing this, that, you know, and then they don't really have any option to argue with you. It doesn't always work, and sometimes you do have to call corporate, or sometimes you do need to come back with your neighbors and your friends so that there's like an army of you, and then he can't say no, right? But
and you'll find that if you do that, you're about the only one that has ever come up to that center. And so it's important that you be very courteous to them. And then when they'll say oftentimes that they're uncomfortable selling, these women clerks, they don't like selling. You mention it on the way out of your hotel. I'm really uncomfortable that this hotel has a porn channel. Are you bothered by that? And these women always tell me, oh yeah, I'm bothered. But then, as Dawn said, get a few others to come. And if you get 5, 6 people, they think everybody's opposed to pornography. And these stores don't make that much on pornography. You know, your convenience stores. So they want to, almighty dollars, what they're looking for. And people say, no. Yes, sir.
You mentioned a little while ago about obscene material being sort of not labeled speech.
Not what speech?
Not labeled speech under the First Amendment.
It's not protected speech.
Right.
Yeah.
What I'm wondering about is the stuff that is protected speech, and if you have any campaigns against that as a way of sort of altering that protection.
Well, not altering that protection. There's a whole series of Supreme Court cases that say that you can only have laws against hardcore pornography, or what's called obscene pornography. And just let me mention what the Supreme Court says about obscene pornography, just in a layman's term. There's a 3-part test that a prosecutor will go through with a jury on whether something is obscene. But the Supreme Court laid it out in layman's term, and they said, let us tell you what may be found to be obscene. And they said, patently offensive depictions of sexual or excretory organs or activities. And they named some of them. But they said this can also be simulated sex. So actually, you could have a movie where the people are under the covers and you don't see any sexual explicit activity, but you know what's going on. That may be found to be obscene. But with respect to nudity, only if something is just waist-up nudity, that can only be found to be softcore. You can't prosecute it. But if the focus is on the genital or pubic areas, or it's actual sex acts, or simulated sex acts, that can be found to be obscene. Utah has a wonderful law on this. Federal law is wonderful too. 45 or 6 states have laws on this. But you can't prosecute softcore pornography. That's why we link you to all these citizen action things. You know, so that like the Federal Communications Commission and others, where we're targeting softcore pornography. Yes, sir.
If a pornographer produces it in California, but I can access it in my home in Utah because it's on the internet, right, can the Utah Attorney General go after the California guy?
Yes, you can prosecute pornography in where it originates. If they put it in the mail there and they ship it to Utah, you can prosecute them either there or here. If it's on the internet, you can prosecute them in Los Angeles or here. But it wouldn't be your Attorney General with respect to internet pornography. The federal government has preempted that field. There's a federal law, and that's interstate trafficking. So your local state law only deals with intra-state, something that's within the state. So right now in Utah, someone who sets up a retail shop selling pornography is violating Utah law. But if you wanted to prosecute that internet pornography, that's your United States attorney. Every state has at least one. Utah has one United States attorney, David Barlow, a couple blocks away. I'll talk about him in my keynote address as well. So he's the one that ought to be prosecuting those pornographers on the internet.